Chris, welcome to the show, man. I massively appreciate you coming on, and it's a real pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, man.
I want to start out with about 17.1. You obviously posted a fairly good score, but from a mindset side of things, how did you go about breaking down something with so many reps?
I just thought of it as 5 sets. So because it was 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, the second you start thinking it's 150 snatches and whatever 75 burpee box jump overs, you're kind of hosed from the start if you start thinking like that. So I just thought of it as 5 sets. So I did my set of 10 and I was like, okay, cool. Set 1 is done. Did my 15. I go back to the dumbbell snatch. Okay, set 2 is done. So I thought of it like that. I kind of buckled. I thought back and I was like, man, I buckled on the round of 50 and I broke that up twice because I could tell I was having like some self-doubt. And I finished the 40. I did the 40 in a row. And I remember thinking like, wow, that hurt. You know, that's starting to hurt. I did my 15 box jump overs and I had this like moment in the back of my head where I thought like, man, I don't know if I can do those 50 in a row. And instead of, I kind of played it a little conservative and I thought, okay, like I got my hands in the chalk bucket and started moving through and my back started to light up a little bit. And I broke that setup twice with maybe about a 10-second break. But looking back, I think I could have just like augured in and really gone to a real dark place. But largely, I think it's just focusing on compartmentalizing the workouts and saying, okay, you know, I'm just in 10 snatches and I'm just on this one burpee box jump over and now this one and this one. So setting micro goals can be really helpful.
Okay. Do you have any phrases or anything that you say to yourself or that you come back to, or is even any like visions or thoughts? Like I find some people have a bit of both.
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about in the competitors course when I used to teach those with Matt and Eric is just this concept of what we call mantras. And it sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's essentially that where it's a chance for us to kind of ground ourselves. So usually I'd say it's in there. And by that, I just mean like my fitness level is there or my abilities there. Sometimes I'll say we've got this because I don't feel like I'm alone in that sense then. So those are the two things that I'll often kind of fall back on, and sometimes I'll just remind myself, man, like I love this. I do this because I love it. And those are the three things that when I feel some negative self-talk come in, I start to fall back on a frequent basis.
What does that negative self-talk sound like, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh my gosh, it's like the constant barrage of, you know, this hurts, or why do I do this, or am I going to be faster than so-and-so? Or, you know, what if I don't get the time that I want? That is always, you know, kind of lingering. And I think it's a skill to learn how to keep that at bay.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a lot of people out there listening to this who will think, oh, like Chris doesn't get this kind of stuff. Like, but it's there more than ever. But as you've said, it's a skill that you've learned to develop, and it is something that you do develop and that you can build on. Is there anything that you think has helped you? Because you're always kind of you're always portrayed as the tenacious guy, the underdog. Is there anything that's kind of helped you, or do you reckon there's anything that's kind of been particularly foundational for you?
I like that. I like being the underdog. I like that sense of maybe a little bit less pressure because I am the underdog. I don't mind when people second guess me because it motivates me, I think, a little bit. So I like playing that role a little bit, and I kind of always have, just kind of the nature, I guess, of my size with sports and stuff like that. I've always played that role. So I've gotten comfortable with it, and I view it as more of a positive thing than anything right now. And that's helped me along the road of, you know, CrossFit. And I started learning that long before that in wrestling.
Okay. When did that start? Like, cause obviously you got the, wrestling as a kid must be pretty hardcore actually. Where do you reckon that tenacity came from?
There is like a defining moment when I was a sophomore in high school, maybe a junior. But I remember I watched a video. My coach in high school, he was kind of like this rough and tumble guy, and not a great technician, but just like beat the crap out of us, worked us to the bone. So it was a lot of like hard work. And he showed us a video of the University of Iowa, and Iowa is kind of notorious for being a really big wrestling university and having some of the toughest guys, and not necessarily technically the best in the nation. They are amazing, but more like their work ethic. So they'll outwork you, they'll outcondition you. And I saw this video of these guys training, and I don't know what it was, but I saw these guys and I was like, holy crap. I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be that. And it just struck a chord with me, where there's this appeal to like these guys that were just tough as nails and would just crush themselves, run through a brick wall, and this mentality that they would work harder than anybody else, outwork everybody else on the wrestling mat. And that was like the moment where it really sunk in, and I realized that's how I want to train. And it just forever changed my outlook on sports, training, anything like that.
So what were you like before that? I'm guessing there's still some, like, a good level of tenacity.
Yeah, I think it was always generally there, but I think I was a little bit more timid. I was kind of timid as a kid. I wasn't because I was a little bit smaller. I mean, I was tiny. You know, when I was in middle school, I think I was 65 or 70 pounds, and in seventh and eighth grade, I think eighth grade I was 70 or 75 pounds. My ninth grade year in high school, I couldn't even wrestle the first half of the year because I didn't weigh as much or weigh enough to wrestle. So I think I was a little bit more timid as a kid, and kind of, you know, that I wasn't as comfortable as that underdog role. I didn't like it then, and there was more self-doubt then. But there was always, even at a young age, starting to learn that I was satisfied with my effort when I kind of poured it in my best. You know, that was a hard thing to learn as a kid on a wrestling mat. But, you know, when you lose, it sucks because you can't blame it on anybody else. There's no way like, oh, so I passed the ball, but that guy missed it. Like, there's nothing, you can't hide. So that was a hard process to go through. But I think it started when I was younger, that the concept of doing our very best is all we can ask for. Now, with that though, is understanding that our best isn't dictated by others' performance. And man, that's been a lifelong process to learn that one.
Yeah, I bet. Do you know of any, or have you do you recall any examples of that when that's been kind of thrown in your face almost?
You know, it's funny. When I was in college, I went through some really interesting stuff. So the way that wrestling kind of works is, not everywhere, but generally what they do when you're in college is you have usually 3 or 4 guys deep in each weight class. And then they have what's called wrestle offs, so that you earn a spot to wrestle varsity. And when you earn that spot, generally it's your spot, and then someone can challenge that. And if they beat you, it's their spot. So there's always this kind of like tension with other guys of your weight class because they can challenge you for your spot. So I earned the spot, and I went out as a redshirt freshman, which would be my second year. And I'd earned that spot, and I had to wrestle. My first college match was against a kid that was an All-American, and then the next kid was like ranked in the nation. They were tough dudes, and I got beat like pretty badly. But my coach, after 2 matches, basically pulled me off the front line and put a kid in there that was already on a full ride. I wasn't on a full ride at all at the time, just kind of like partial scholarship, and I had beaten this kid for the spot. And they pulled me out, and for the rest of the year, I had to train. I had to cut weight and travel with the team, and I would weigh in, and they would wait to tell me when I was going to wrestle, and they usually wouldn't tell me until right before the match, and they would always choose this other kid. So for that entire year, I basically had to train as if I was going to wrestle varsity, and I had to suck weight just like everybody else, and I never wrestled varsity. And that was a real defining year on that tenacity piece, as well as learning that other people's actions don't control my ability and my performance. And that was a really tough lesson, man. That was really tough. But through college, I really learned that it doesn't matter what anybody else does. It doesn't affect my performance.
That's awesome. That's a great little story there. That
Thanks,
really
man.
kind of hits the nail on the head. So you went to did I get it right that you're a bit of a ski bum before you went to open in
Yeah,
box? Yeah. Okay.
for sure.
Yeah. How long's that last?
Oh my gosh, probably 5 years. Yeah, I
Great
moved
5 years though.
it was hard though, man. I was like all worried what I was gonna do with my life, but looking back, it was pretty killer. I mean, I was basically spent, from the time I graduated college, I moved out to Park City, Utah, and I was a total ski bum. I was making $9 an hour, working 4 days a week, and doing, some personal training on the side. I think my first year, like where I was actually on my own, I think I made like it was like 12 or 13 grand that year,
Sweet.
barely barely living,
But you
but
got powder days, so it's worth it.
oh, totally. I skied like 100 days a year. I'd ride my bike every day and just worked in the shop. I did that for, probably 4 or 5 years.
Nice. How does that outside kind of aspect of training affect or when, especially when you're competing? Actually, how did that kind of sit with the rest of your training?
Competing with training, like with the
Yeah, so
past
like
experience.
finding a balance between enjoyment and outside stuff outside of
Oh man,
CrossFit.
went away. There wasn't a balance. I mean, like it kind of started where, um, as the ski bum thing, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I stumbled into this CrossFit thing, and through these conversations with some friends, I ended up starting an affiliate. And shortly after that, there's this thing called the CrossFit Games. I try it. I'm pretty good at it. I like it. I start to do it more, and then just my personality. I'm just kind of an all or nothing guy. So I end up being really driven, and hey, oh wow, maybe I could win this. I get third, and then it just like snowballed from there. So there wasn't balance. There were plenty of years where I went skiing maybe 3-4 times in the entire year, which is vastly different than 100. There wasn't balance, man. What I was doing was training to win the CrossFit Games.
So feel free to pass on this, but was it worth it?
Uh yeah, for sure. There wasn't. I don't have any regrets on what I did at all. And I will say though that there's sacrifice, right? There's a tremendous sacrifice that I think most people underestimate, and most people don't realize before they try to go down that road. And it's not just sacrifice that I had to make, but depending on the role that you guys are in or your lifestyle, it's sacrifice that people around you have to make. So if you have a wife or a husband, or you have kids or a business or whatever, all that stuff is going to take a back seat to you training. And that's just the reality of it. So I don't regret it at all. But it definitely had an effect on my lifestyle without a doubt.
Mm. In your first games, did you have actually, when was the moment that you decided, actually, CrossFit, this is where I'm going. I'm taking this seriously now.
Oh man, probably my level one. I took my level one, and I had kind of gotten in the CrossFit thing just following.com, and it at my level one is kind of when the light bulb really went off, and I thought, man, how cool would it be to teach seminars for these guys? And it all just made so much sense when I heard it presented the way that it was, and um, yeah, man, that's when I knew that CrossFit was kind of the avenue that I wanted to take professionally. And then the competition stuff, I just evolved with it. I just was there early enough that I evolved with the community as it grew. And it was just like a natural piece for me.
Okay. Was there ever like a vision of success in as much as you knew exactly what you're working for, or was it I think I know what you're going to say, or was it a kind of, I'll just see what happens?
Um, I knew what I wanted.
Mhm.
I definitely knew that I wanted to win the CrossFit Games, and I trained for that. I also knew that in 2014, I wasn't going to win the CrossFit Games. I knew that I wasn't that kind of athlete. The sport had evolved enough, that when you're walking out on the floor at 36 years old, 5'5" with your shoes on and 142. It's not a recipe for winning the CrossFit Games. So I knew that my goals changed, but I definitely had things driving me. There were reasons why I was doing what I was doing, and it wasn't just like to see how it would go. I was pretty clear on what I wanted.
And that was 100% to win the games, or was there other stuff in there as well?
Earlier, it was to win the games. I would say 2007, 8, 9, and 10, I wanted to win the games. 2011, same thing. I was like, I really want to win. 2012 is when I started to realize, whoa, like this is changing. You know, weights are significantly heavier. And for me to win, programming is going to have to be slanted a little bit in my direction. Things are going to have to really fall into place regardless of like how amazing I perform. There's just, I don't care what anybody says now, there's a body type that CrossFit favors. It just is. If you are, 5'8" and 195 pounds, man, you're cooking with grease, because you have a shorter range of motion, you have the muscle mass to move weight. It's just, you see it happen, it's just where it is. So as that happened, my goals kind of evolved with it. And a lot of times that was to get in the top 15 at the CrossFit Games. And then even that changed in the last year. I still wanted top 15 at the games, but as the weekend went on and I realized that, it kind of slipped away. I was like, hey, I want to make sure that I make that final cut and I'm there on the floor for the last workouts.
When you're walking out into like wherever you're competing, what's going through your mind as you're A, warming up, and then B, actually when you're walking out to start?
It's funny. I used to struggle with that when I was wrestling, trying to kind of battle those nerves a little bit. I still did get nervous for sure with CrossFit, but like it's time. That's time. That's what you've worked so hard for. And for me, it wasn't just like the hours that I put in the gym, but it was all the time I spent wrestling and training for wrestling. And so it was like, now it's time to put it to use, so I always felt really focused, nervous for sure, but just focused, and really in the moment, no distractions, in the moment, focused on what I could do. And yeah, it's like oddly like serene or calm in a weird way because of that focus.
Okay. And did you, when you're actually working out, did you hear the crowd? Did you hear anything else?
There were times where, yeah, for sure. You can hear things for sure. And a lot of times you would hear like Castro over the PA system and you can kind of figure out where you are in the heat, or, you could hear the crowd freak out if someone missed a lift or if someone hit a lift or if somebody's pulling ahead. And there were times for sure where it was like, one of the coolest experiences of my life, just having thousands of people in a tennis stadium with all their eyes on you is pretty special moment.
What would you say your biggest challenge in your competitive career was?
Oh man, I think probably having one of two things: having the lifestyle that I did during competing. So being a husband and a father of two and owning an affiliate, and at the time working for CrossFit headquarters and teaching seminars almost every weekend and training for the games, like that's a lot. That's a lot on your plate.
5 jobs there.
Yeah. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge, is just how to manage that. How do you do that? How do you do all of it well? Because I don't think you really can do all of it well. I think you can do most of it good, but not all of it super amazing. And then the other thing is just like the way the sport evolved, just keeping up with the loading. I mean, having to move those weights the way that other guys did. And it's not like a woe is me thing. It's just the reality of the situation, weighing 145 pounds and having to do squat cleans at 225 or deadlifts at 405 or whatever. It's just a different monster than someone that's doing it at 200 pounds. So that was always a really, really focused part of my training and a big challenge to be able to keep up with that.
Was there anything in either wrestling or CrossFit that you thought was like a massive mistake, or that you thought was going to hinge you massively, but actually kind of turned out quite positively? Because like I find that with a few athletes, especially athletes, actually, there's something that they think was a disaster that's actually made them who they are.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, no, like nothing that I did. The bit that I told you about with the wrestling that year, where I basically kind of rode the pine there, and undeservedly, because I ended up wrestling off with that kid another 2 times, and I beat him 2 more times, and I still didn't get a chance to wrestle. That, holy crap! Like emotionally and physically, that year was incredibly draining. But that year also really helped shape me into the person and the athlete that I am now. And that during that, oh my gosh, that year was one of the toughest years that I've ever faced, but it also made me who I am now.
So days when you feel like, sorry, this is a complete left turn as well. It's kind of how I how I interview. Days when you feel like you don't want to train, days when you feel like I just want some time off or to go skiing or whatever. What was the thing that got you back in the gym, or were there times when you just thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want to do?
Yeah, when I was training, it just wasn't an option. It's like that's just not even an option. So do you feel like some days you're just not up to snuff or you just can't do it all? Yeah, for sure. But the reality is like you can't afford that. You can't afford to, feel like that and then succumb to those feelings on a frequent basis. You might have to adjust your training. You might have to make things a little bit different. But to be the best in the world, like you can't not train when you have a bad day. It just doesn't exist. So when people are like, oh, somebody I was talking to my buddy Doug, and he works with a bunch of high school kids, and some of the kids he has, they have these big goals of playing Division I sports, and he's like, okay, so this is what it's going to take. But they're like, yeah, well, I couldn't make it on Saturday because I was kind of like, it's like, what are you talking about? Like that's not even an option if you want to do that. So I think understanding why I was doing it made it a real good reason to go in the gym even when it was not fun, because there are a lot of days where it's not fun.
So was your self-talk something along the lines of, and sorry if this is a leading question, but was it something along the lines of, I know what I'm trying to get out of this, I know where I want to be, and related to your why?
I think it was that I knew where I wanted to be, and I also think one of the other things that people have to realize is like you have to earn it. No one's going to give it to you. You have to earn it, and that always kind of sat with me, especially after like 2009 CrossFit Games. It's like nobody's giving you anything. Like you have to earn this, and if you want to earn it and walk away knowing you did everything you could, then just because you don't feel good today doesn't mean you get to go skiing, because guess what? Chances are you might not feel good later on in the week too. You do a lot of ski days.
Yeah. So I might have just heard this from somewhere else and it might be completely wrong, but I think I've heard that you've got quite a strong faith.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
How does that affect training, and do you think it's helped you?
Oh, tremendously. I think anybody that doesn't have something, and I think for me, my faith and just my relationship with Christ, that is essentially what defines me, and what defines who I am, and my self-worth is not based. My being loved by Jesus Christ isn't dependent upon my performance. And I think that when athletes go into anything where they start to have higher levels of investment and more training hours and more time dedicated, the reality is the more we put into something, the more you're going to risk heartbreak. I don't care what people say. It's like, sometimes people are like, oh, everybody risks heartbreak. Well, it's like, well, not really. I mean, maybe on some level, but if you've been training 6 hours a day and you change your entire lifestyle to try to win something or qualify for something, and then if that doesn't happen, what do people have left? I know people that have gotten ruined, like absolutely ruined emotionally from not qualifying or not placing, or in a variety of sports, not just CrossFit, But if we have something to fall back on, as who we are, where our identity lies, where our self-worth lies, then I think it's much easier to handle those things when they do come along, because it's going to come for everybody. I don't care who you are. Even if you're the best in the world, guess what? Someone's going to forget your name. Like they do. And if you don't have something to be grounded in, I think it leads to anxiety and it leads to people feeling undue pressure. Where for me, when I went out on the floor, it's not easy to think this way. And I didn't always think this way, but even if it doesn't pan out the way that I want it to, it doesn't define my self-worth. And that makes for more of a calm competitor. And I've always said it, a calm competitor is a dangerous one, because man, if they can go into that atmosphere calm and like genuinely believing that they can win and not worried about the risk of failure, the people that are worried about it, you're screwed.
That's exactly it. That's exactly right. The calmness, I think, is probably one of the most underestimated things out there. I was speaking to James Fitzgerald on one of these podcasts, and he was talking about the deadlift and talking about having the music so loud, and like some people just want to rip it off the floor, but like he was saying, why would you want to have like something distracting you from such a contraction, and you'd want to be entirely present? Are there any other ways that you, sorry, I was going somewhere with that. No. Are there any other ways that you go about cultivating presence or calmness or anything like that?
I think it's going back to that, like your why. Why am I doing this, and what am I really like? What am I really worried about? What am I really afraid of? You know, as I think everybody goes into things either nervous or fearful, and identifying what that is. Like, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of what other people are going to think? Am I afraid of failure? Am I afraid of how bad it's going to hurt? Whatever that is, if you can identify that and then start to realize, like, look, a good example is, so like I did, 17.1, and I was out of town. I was sick. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to get this done. And I did it, and I was happy with my score. But because I broke on that set of 50, I was like, oh man, like I know I can go faster. Like I know if I really dug in, like I'm confident I could get low 12s, maybe 11 something if I like really went for it. And then I thought, okay, well, I learned that. And I kind of learned some pacing things, and I had to fight to not do the workout again. And I started to think like, okay, why do I want to do the workout again? And the reality is the only reason why I would want to do it again is so I can post a time and people can say, wow, Chris can still do this in X time. Or wow, Chris is still close to this place for qualifying for regionals. Or Chris is still, and I was like, that's the dumbest reason for me to redo the workout if I'm just worried about what other people think about my time. You know what I mean? It's like, for the space that I'm at in my life, it's like, I'm just going to keep training. I'm going to try to get over this head cold thing. And then when the open workout comes up on Thursday, I'll check it out and then just throw down on Friday. Like, so identifying why, I think, is a really important way for us to start to see, okay, how do we stay calm? How do we stay engaged? How do we stay present and in the moment? And then with that, setting those micro goals, like we talked about earlier, just like, okay, I'm going to break it into 5 sets. Or when we do the burpee, it's like hands down, feet back, step to the box, jump, turn around, hands down, feet back. Those little things really help, I think, people stay in the moment.
So you're thinking about the individual aspects of each movement as well, especially in the burpee. Yeah.
It can be, yeah. Or as like you break something, it could be like, take 3 steps back. Okay, now take 3 steps forward. All right, now put your hands on the bar. And then all of a sudden you're moving again. Okay, cool, I'm moving again. So it's taking small things, little things, instead of taking a knee, stand up, stand tall, be hungry for the barbell, walk to the barbell. So then you're constantly feeding yourself with positivity instead of like, oh my gosh, I'm just waiting and I'm stuck and now I can't pick up the bar. It's like, no, take 3 steps back. Okay, cool. I'll take a couple of breaths. Okay, cool. Now walk to the bar. Good, I did that. Put your hands on the bar. Okay, I did that. So now it's a positive flow instead of viewed as, well, now I'm burning daylight.
Okay, nice. So I think what you've kind of said there is you're remaining present in the moment, because a lot of people, I think, they tell themselves, or they've heard, they need to switch off and go somewhere else, but you're doing the opposite of that. Really, you're focusing exactly on the task there, whether it's a tiny goal or a massive goal. You're focusing on like, this is why I'm here and this is who I am, and you're feeling alive.
Yeah, for sure. And like we can go other places, so to speak, like you can let your mind kind of escape in a way, but I think a lot of that is like the reason why that should happen is if we're trying to stay present, right? Because what happens is if we're not present and in the moment, I think we get ahead of ourselves, and we've all experienced this. Let's just stick with 17.1. If you're doing the burpee box jumps, and this is what happened to me. If you're doing the burpee box jumps on your set of, after your set of 30 snatches and you're doing your burpee box jumps, and in the back of your head, all you're thinking about is, holy crap, I have 90 more of these to do. I have 90 more. Now your burpee box jump, before you know it's slower because you're focused on something else. You're like, well, 90, I don't know if I can do 90 because 90 is like, that's 90 reps. And what am I going to do instead? If you're like, no, I'm doing my burpee box jumps and this is how I feel. I feel good. I feel strong, and you can kind of gauge your pace and little things. Like I didn't count 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Cause now I only have to do 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. So it's like those little things matter, and people don't take the time. I don't think they take the time to look at that and maybe figure out just what works for them, because it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever done any specific mindset work or anything to try and cultivate, or any outside learning or anything like that?
I did. I used to do like a little bit of visualization stuff before some of the larger competitions, like regionals, especially. Since we knew the workouts, I'd try to do some visualization, like when I woke up in the morning, just laying in bed, visualize like a successful event. And I don't think that I'm not one of those people that believes that if you visualize it, it comes true,
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of silly. You need to work really
Yeah.
hard and things need to come into line. But I do think that if we visualize things, that we feel more well prepared, more calm, and more present. And it's just one more thing that stacks the favor in your odds. So I would do some of that. I know when I was in college, I dealt with some of that self doubt, and I tried to walk around for a while with like a rubber band on my wrist. And when I start to have negative thoughts, I'd like snap it to try to get my mind off of it. That never seemed to work well for me. But I think it's just practicing what works well for you. And again, the two biggest things for me have always been defining your why, and also realizing like don't listen to other people. Like
Mm.
whatever they say, it has no bearing on what you can do at all. My dad told me as a kid, he's like, never compare yourself to anybody else because you'll only be as good as they are. And I was like, it's pretty good advice.
Was there a moment that I don't want to just walk all over that with my words as well? That is an awesome bit of advice. That's one of those things that I'm going to remember for a while.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where that self-doubt, because you mentioned it like 4 or 5 times, either came to a head or dissipated?
Yeah, mostly in college. There were basically like 2 years in college where I had a lot of self doubt. It was that first year where I kind of was riding the pine there and just didn't get much time on the wrestling mat. And then that happened again, like not the following year, but the year after. I kind of was just like struggling big time mentally. I was really good in the practice room, and I struggled when putting into practice out on the mat when there was some pressure on. And that finally, like those ebbs and flows, that finally kind of resolved itself my senior year. I remember I was warming up and I had earned the varsity spot, and it was my last year. And I thought, like, this is the last year that I will ever wrestle. And I've been doing it since I was 6 years old. So I remember warming up and thinking to myself, like, if you don't show up now and you don't let go of this, then you're going to walk away with a lot of regret. And I remember just kind of having this conversation with myself where it was less about how I finished and more about like finishing in the way of like, I'm going to finish on my terms, knowing that I did everything that I could do out on that wrestling mat, and I'm going to outwork everybody. And that last year was really good for me to finish on that note, because I kind of left that and then went through the ski bum phase. And then I picked that back up with CrossFit. I just once I got into the CrossFit, I didn't really struggle with much of the self-doubt stuff. It was just, I think I was more mature as an athlete, and it had been a little bit more resolved, and playing the underdog role was comfortable. And yeah, it just was a natural progression, I think, for me.
When something in a competition came up, like for example rowing or something heavy,
Yeah.
how did you cope with that? Because obviously they're not going to be your strong points.
Yeah. Why, Tom? So yeah, I think there were definitely workouts where it was okay. I just got to keep my head above water for sure, and those were often the least pressure because I knew I wasn't going to win them. So that was the ones where I just focused on how do I maximize my ability and how do I really put it to this workout in my time. So I would often say to myself in situations like that, in the warm up area, or when I was out there, I just say my workout, my pace, my workout, my pace, and I would just ignore everybody else because it just doesn't apply. It didn't apply to me. There were more situations where the pressure's on, and like Jackie, at regionals in 2013, I think it was, when it's Jackie and times are super tight. And it's kind of nobody is favored at the workout. Everybody can do well, and 3 seconds matter. Those are the ones where you really had to have a little bit more ammunition with the self-talk.
Okay, nice. You've mentioned, well, you mentioned faith, and that kind of goes hand in hand with prayer. But also,
Yeah.
I kind of think on a link to that is meditation. So,
Uh-huh.
is prayer like a regular thing within your daily life, or is meditation or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. Prayer, without a doubt. And I think it's more in the sense of just like a kind of trying to have just a constant conversation or just a frequent conversation with God. And honestly, like that, I think that is meditation, right? Meditation is just focusing on something or kind of milling it over, and that might be for me kind of revisiting like a verse that I've read in scripture, or just like kind of revisiting that and letting it soak in a little bit. And I think that a lot of my self-talk is in an odd way. It's like prayer in a way, it's not like I'm having this formal conversation with God, but the reason why I say we've got this is because like you know, it's, I don't think God cares where I finish. And I don't think God really cares, you know, who in the cross games. Like, I don't think that, but I do think he cares about me, and I think he cares about you, and I think he cares about us. And I think when I say we've got this, I mean me and him, because I think he just genuinely enjoys being a part of our lives. And it doesn't have to look like I think a lot of people think it does look like. And I think the way he's wired me is I just like to work out, man. I like to ski. I like fitness. I like to be athletic. And like, if that's a way for me to connect with God, I think he's stoked on it, And other people do that through music or through, you know, studying, through reading, a variety of things. And that's what I think is so beautiful about it all and so cool, is that it doesn't have to look the same. I think God's just stoked to hang out with you.
Sweet. That's perfect. Are there any other kind of routines you follow on a either daily or weekly, or like even before WODs or before you go to bed, anything like that kind of you think helps you get yourself in the right mindset?
I think, for me, it's always ebbs and flows. I'm better about it sometimes, and it looks different. But just that, for me, it's just finding ways to connect with God. And sometimes that's working out, and sometimes that's reading the Bible, and sometimes that's praying, sometimes that's listening to a podcast in my truck, or so those are all ways. For me, it's just how do I stay connected to Him. And if I can stay connected to Him, all the other stuff will kind of stack up. Being a dad, being a husband, you know, going into the Open this year with a different mentality. It's like if I can be grounded in that, all those other things will stack up, and that just looks a little bit different every day. And then for those of you guys that are in the real uber competitive realm, I would suggest having like a really routine warm up that you always do, something that is always, you don't ever change it, you always do it, because you don't want to have any doubt on how long that workout's going to take, or the warm up's going to take. You don't want to worry about what others are doing and how that affects what you think you should be doing. So for those of you guys that are out there doing that, come up with a really consistent general warm-up routine. And we have that on Icon, where we just call it the Icon Dynamic Warm-Up, that people can use if they want to. And then it takes about 5 or 7 minutes. And during that 5 or 7 minutes, if you know exactly what it is and you've walked through it, you don't even have to think about what to do. You can already start thinking about positive self-talk and visualizing going through the workout. So while you're warming up, you can already be a step ahead of the rest of the crew.
Nice. When you're training, is it a social thing or is it an individual thing now?
Oh man, I wish it was social all the time, but I think it's a mix right now, just with work and life, things like that. I try to work out with the class as much as I can. It's not as often as I would like all the time. I like to work out with people because I think I didn't for about 7 years there. So I really enjoy working out with the class and the community. But there are for sure days that, like this afternoon, I'll just throw down by myself because it's just the way my workday panned out, and that's okay. But I enjoy the community aspect.
How do you motivate yourself when you're training alone?
It's different these days, you know. Like I used to be again that like it's not an option. Like it just doesn't. People are like, "Oh, it's so hard to motivate." I'm like, "Well, this is just not an option. Like you can't." I know it's hard, so suck it up and work as hard as you can for today because that's just what you have to do. But some days now I'm just like, I just want to work out and be fit. So if there are days where I'm just not motivated, I might do things that I like have put movements in workouts that I would like to do. Or maybe I'm just like, you know what? Like I'm not gonna flip the switch and see the white light today. I'm just not. Like I'm just gonna work hard for today and let that be what it is. And then maybe once a week I like really go there, really go there. But I don't think for most people that are just training for life, I don't think they have to like fall flat on their back every day, be hyperventilating, need the AED, and be resuscitated from a workout. I think they can work pretty hard and see a lot of results.
Nice. Who's the first person that comes to mind when you think of someone with a good mindset?
Oh man. I'm trying to think. Someone that I've recently started working with, Molly Vollmer. She's awesome. She's got a really good head on her shoulders.
Why is that?
I think she knows her weaknesses and she knows her strengths. And I think she's really comfortable with that. And I think she also really enjoys the process. I think she's on Team NorCal, and I think she just enjoys the process. And she kind of is like when in the environments, the little bit that I've seen her, the environments that I see her in, she's kind of the one that's maybe a little bit more cheery and a little bit brings light to the situation and still has fun, but takes it really serious. And I appreciate that she knows why she likes doing team versus individual. And I appreciate that I just appreciate her mentality, you know, for sure. Everyone could be like Rich Froning, you know, yeah, sure. Rich is mentally a beast, right? But thinking of other people, I think, you know, in the CrossFit world, Molly, and then just with kind of who I've been working with recently. And then otherwise, other than that, I mean, I know some wrestlers from way back in the past that were just kind of nuts, you know, they're crazy. But also there is just kind of cool to see their mentality and
what aspect of that?
There's just like some crazy stuff out there from guys that are just like had it so together. There's a guy, Ray Brinzer, and he wrestled for Iowa, I believe. And he was like, I love this because it's just like kind of creepy in a way for the opponent. He used to sit in his chair and read a book, and he had these big bottle cap glasses, and he would hold like a stuffed animal Gumby, and he would read his book, and they would have to the guys like on his team would have to tap on his shoulder and be like, "Hey Ray, it's time to warm up. You're coming up next." And he'd be like, "Okay." So he put his book down, he'd take his stuff off, and he would set his Gumby up on the corner of the mat and go out there and just destroy guys, just crush them, and then go pick up his Gumby and sit back down and read his book with Gumby. And I think from some of the stuff that I don't know him personally, but from some of the stuff that I read, he kind of did it because he also knew that it was like just a little bit of a head game for guys. And I don't know. I appreciate stuff like that sometimes.
Sounds like Schwarzenegger's mental games before
Right,
bodybuilding
right.
comps. It's awesome.
Exactly, man. Like like when it's cocky, I can't stand it. So I like in that pumping iron, I felt so bad for Lou Ferrigno because you can tell he's just destroyed. He's defeated before he even goes out there.
It's awesome.
But it's like Josh Bridges. That's how Josh is in the back. It's
Yeah.
like you have to accept that. You have to accept that Josh is probably gonna bust your balls a little bit in the back. And if you can't handle it, then you might not be ready.
Do you remember any times you did that?
Oh my gosh, Josh was always being a goof in the back. He had kind of his crew that he would hang out with a little bit, like he and Froning and Bailey, and but you were never, you could never count yourself out from being a victim of Bridges' comments. So you either had to roll with it and kind of have fun with it, which most people do, or people got shaken up by it, which is, I think, kind of funny.
That's awesome. What do you think makes a great mindset?
What I think makes a great mindset, I think just going back to defining why. That looks different for everybody. And mindset, I think people they always use that with like elite competitors. But mindset is like the mom and dad that have accepted that, you know what, I'm not trying to go to regionals or I'm not trying to go to the CrossFit Games. So I'm just going to work out an hour a day and I'm going to be content with that. Because guess what? It's probably harder for people that have maybe been in my shoes or other athletes' shoes like Chan and Kalipa and all these guys that were kind of in this transition phase. Like there's still like this expectation on us or something, and there still might be this, well, I wonder what they're going to do or how they're going to do. But if you can have the mindset where like Jason, he's more focused on his business and being there for his daughter who has fighting leukemia, like that's mindset. And Chan, that's recovering from having a messed up back and like the injury that he had with his leg, like he has a good mindset, he's in a good space right now. And me going through that process, like that can be mindset. It doesn't have to be, how do I be the best in the world? We all need to have an identify of why am I doing this? And that, if you don't revisit that on at least a relatively frequent basis, I think people are going to fall down the rabbit hole of training for the wrong reasons. And that's poor mindset.
Nice. That's an awesome place to end. Where can people find out a bit more about yourself and Icon and all that kind of stuff?
Just my social media stuff, C Spealler. That's just kind of me and my life. Icon Athlete. That's also Instagram, and then our Facebook page, and then iconathlete.com. We're very much along those lines, guys. It's just we want to be there for you regardless of where you are on your fitness journey. If you want to go to the CrossFit Games, awesome. We have resources to get you there. If you're just a mom or dad that's looking for some guidance, or the athlete outside that uses CrossFit as a means to an end, awesome. We have resources for you. So, all sorts of stuff on there, videos. We have other podcasts. We have, we talk about topics with mentality, workout efficiency stuff, movement tips. We have an optional nutrition section. We have a little prehab rehab section. So there's all sorts of ammo for people to get in there. And we just try to stay super active. We're really community oriented instead of just performance oriented.
Sweet. Well, I'll definitely be checking you out more because I really enjoy what you're doing. It's really good to see someone who is not only pushing the like performance side of things, but the whole performance for everyone. I think is a better way of saying it. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and you've kind of really touched on a lot of topics that I think are going to be really powerful for people. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. My pleasure, man.